So I couldn't wait. Hey, it's Romania Black. No, How could I wait when they give us a cliffhanger like that? How do you all expect me to wait? No, I couldn't. So no, I needed to go ahead and watch this episode because the cliffhanger was too much. I was like, who is this? What is going on? In traditional MXTX fashion, and the funny thing is, I know when I read the novel, that ending of episode 3 is going to be a chapter ending, but the chapter is probably going to explain who it is. It's going to be like, it was someone that looked exactly like Shin or something like that, and I'll be like, what? But I don't know who this person is, and I need to know. So I was like, I can't go on any longer until I find out. So yeah, sorry. So it may be a few episodes before I get into some like significant comments, but this just needed to happen. It had to. So we're on episode 4 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. I do have a few comments. Most of the comments for episode 1 were just like, oh my god, you're watching Scum Villain. Yes, I'm giving the elder sibling their just due. But SQQLBH314 talked about how Billy, apparently there's a person that was involved in the motion capture team. I didn't know if the CGI was motion capture based. Apparently it is. But they were like on the team and did like several videos talking about behind the scenes things. They said a lot of them I can't watch because they are spoilery for future episodes, but they did say that they were responsible for like the man of the mansion and the concubines like kissy scene, and I was like, well, thank you for contributing that to the fandom. So I don't know if that means that scene doesn't happen in the novel. If that means that, I guess we'll find out. I don't want spoilers. I don't want to know what's in the novel, what's in the donghua, what the differences are, what the similarities are. I don't want to know that because I'm going to read the novel afterwards and I like to be surprised. But judging by that comment, I'm assuming that means that the kissy stuff is not in the novel. We'll see. We'll see. Also, Sunray said that Lo me is the name of a river, and Bing is means cold river. Which, yeah, I like the idea of this cold river slowly getting warmed up by Shin Chanchu. Yeah, I love Shin. Shin is so funny, and they're such a diva. Shin is such a diva, but they don't know that they're a diva. That's the hilarious thing. Shin is quite oblivious to how they actually are as a character, and they think that they're really smart, and they're like, oh, I'm getting on top of this. I'm doing everything right. And I'm like, you're also such a peacock. And they don't even realize it. It's just Shin is so unique compared to other MXTX protagonists. And I say protagonists because we are technically following Shin along the journey. They may be labeled as the villain. It's like a Megamind situation. They are labeled as a villain, but they are the protagonist of this story. And ironically enough, our protagonist, Lo, is technically to Shin kind of the antagonist, but this is an enemies to lovers story, and I'm here for it. So yes, I'm actually really here for it because without I guess spoilers for Heaven Official's Blessing and Modao Zushi up here, but Modao Zushi was really like childhood friends to enemies to lovers, but they were like friends all along, and then it just kind of like evolved from there. And then Heaven Official's Blessing is literally like God and his devotee get closer and closer and closer, and that's pretty much it. So this being into spoilers, this being a, enemies to lover type story is really kind of unique, and it's the first MXTX story, so I guess it set the bar, and then the other stories kind of branched off from it. But I really like that, and I'm super excited for this episode. I don't know what we're getting. Now Shin says that they want to go to a cave and train. That makes sense. To try to get enough B points saved up to unlock that OOC, that out of character mode. Meanwhile, Lo is training. I feel like there's going to be a time skip happen, but I don't know exactly when. But I want to know who this mysterious person is. Why are they covered in blood? What is going on? And go from there. So before we start this episode, I want to give a very quick shout out over to Patreon, to our philanthropy tier, because you all support me on YouTube, which is super exciting and super helpful. But the people on Patreon, whether they're just doing $1, $5 to get the episodes a week early, or they're doing the philanthropy tier, which get all of that plus a shout out. You all are amazing, and I really appreciate you donating your money and your time to watch this teacher fangirl about Chinese Danmai. It's like, why not? So I'm super happy that you guys are supporting, but I want to give a special shout out over to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, to Eric, to Curie, to Lyndon, to Matthew Palfinier, to Murph Hugh, to Nicholas, to Nameless Monster, to Shimoyama, to Sunspots, as well as Trails, Translucent Men, and Mateo El Fidel. Thank you all so very much for supporting me. I really appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, I didn't have to go to work until later this morning. So I woke up this morning, got ready, got my coffee, and was like, you know what? I can't wait. I need to watch Scumvillain right now. And see what we get. So let's round out the month with a nice episode of Scumvillain. So get my extra dose of caffeine there as if I need it. But we are going to start Scumvillain's Self-Saving System, episode 4, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I've got to skip this stupid OP and ED. It makes the episode so much shorter, right? Okay. That was a much better ending to that episode because it wasn't quite just a cliffhanger of wait, what? That ending to this episode was a pretty fair point to like cut off at, but my god, these episodes are not long enough. They really aren't. No. And I have a feeling there's 4 volumes back there. I don't think this first season of 10 episodes gets through volume 1. It doesn't feel like it's enough content to get through volume 1. I could be very wrong about that. And that's fine. But it just doesn't feel like it's getting through volume 1 so far. Because we're almost to the halfway point of the season, which is insane to me. And I feel like we've tread a lot of ground, but at the same time we haven't. So, I don't know. Let's talk about this episode, though. Talk about Shin. Shin, my beautiful peacock, my beautiful diva. I love you so much. You're so oblivious. But I'm like, God, I love him. Because he's kind of arrogant. And such, like, he was such a bro in the first episode. And he's already grown so much. But there's times where I'm like, oh, dude, you have no idea. And I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop and for him to like put 2 and 2 together and be like, what? And then the show's like, the self-saving system's like, yeah, bitch, we've been trying to like tell you the hidden storyline all along. Do you not understand? So let's go into this storyline. The one thing I forgot at this point, the one thing that I had kind of forgotten about was the fact that Shin knows the entire story. Shin knows the whole story from front to back. He's experienced it all. So he knows all of these side quests and he knows everything that needs to happen in order for the story to have the bad ending. And so he's actively trying to not end up in the pickle jar, right? That is his whole point. He's like, oh, I don't want to end up in the pickle jar. And so when he saw the sword last episode, I was like, well, it's a sword from their clan because it has the same little heavenly sky tribe emblem on it. So I was like, it's one he knows. So of course, then he's like, oh, this is where we're at in the story. Okay. Because it is a very ridiculously long story in the context of this. So let's get up here on Whiteboard Coon and talk about, okay, so here is the plot changes that are happening that Shin has actively done to save the plot. So one thing was the carriage ride. That started this whole damn thing off. The carriage ride, I guess before the carriage ride even, we might as well just put an honorable mention up here that we had the Jade Talisman being found. The Jade Talisman, we're going to put, okay, objects that we've received that are important. And one is the Jade Talisman. All right. So we had the Jade Talisman was a big thing that's going to be used later. And then the God Binding Rope. Or the God Binding Thread. That is the other thing. So those 2 items that we've collected are going to be relevant later on in the story. But the carriage ride is a plot change. successfully changed the plot, and saving this guy, whoever his name is, we'll see that in a second, saving him is a plot change. So the carriage ride gets the secret storyline going, which has caused Lo's sexual awakening and realizing that, oh, maybe I'm attracted to Shin. And the thing about it is the characters are the same, right? The characters are the same. We just have our mild-mannered man from the real world playing Shin. But Lo's character is the same regardless of how the storyline changes or doesn't change. So the question remains, Lo may have always had this latent homosexuality that they just didn't realize, or maybe they just were super pissed at Shin, even if they were attracted to men, and were just like, well, not you, and punished him by putting him in the pickle jar. And so now the story is changing where Lo, who's having this awakening, as they probably would have regardless in the story, is having their sexual awakening, but also realizing they might have a crush on Shin. And so there's that little added like twist to it, right? But that's so good. I love it. So yeah, he dodges this guy. It's just a random person. Glad it wasn't like Shin from the past or something like that, which we now know is not possible. But I like that he's like, why do I have to meet this guy? And then he's like, this is bad. And then he manages to block him and do that. Makes the big explosion. And then this guy like starts to get on the ground and like crumbles. He's like, oh, okay. And he's like, oh, am I so powerful? He's like, it feels I don't need any meditation. Shin is such a peacock. I love him. Because he was just like, he meditated for 5 seconds. Was at any time, and then he manages to subdue this guy. Here's the thing. The guy he subdues is covered in cuts and bruises, is bleeding profusely, looks like he's about to die anyway, and Shin's like, oh my god, I've gotten so strong. I've been in this cave for 10 seconds, and I'm already stronger than this man of the clan. And I'm like, dude, the bar wasn't high. Shin's confidence and the way they animate it and the way he's like, oh, I did it. I'm just like, I can't with you. You're so funny. I cannot. He's like, and then the one guy's like, if it wasn't for my unstable aura, the palm strike just now could have killed me. He's like, my aura is the one that's unstable. It's not you. I love it. This show is so funny because it's playing on so many tropes, right? It's playing on all of these tropes that we've seen in other MXTX works. I'm not as familiar with Chinese fantasy, but I know from MXTX's other stories, I've seen these tropes, and I've seen them in anime as well. So, you know, the protagonist is like, I'm so strong. It's like the plot convenience for the protagonist. But Shin also believes that they are so smart. And it's like, but dude, you're only really smart because you know the story already. You've already read this once, so of course you know what's gonna happen. Like when he's going on and on about like the past and history behind the demon attack, and Ming Fan's like, oh my god, you're so smart, sir. And he's like, yes, of course. It's like, no, you've just read this before. You know exactly what's gonna happen. And he's like, I guess my guess was right. He's like, he is the strongest in the 12 peaks. And the way that MXTX describes some of this, the 12 peaks of Kang Chong, Bison's peak master. It's just so meta. It's just like all these illustrious titles and everything that you're just like, what? So Bison Peaks, peak master, Liu Qingge. Liu Qingge, right? So Liu, we have Lo and we have Liu Qing. Okay, so in the original story, he kills him while he's training because Shin's character originally is a very big jerk. And Shin kind of notes, he's like, oh, I kind of know why Shin's character is so arrogant, because he's really strong and his clan just kind of bolsters his ego more and more. And he's like, luckily I can keep my ego in check. And I'm like, can you, sir? I don't know. You got a little ambitious there at the end, but we'll get there. And he's like, according to the original novel, he took advantage and murdered him while he was practicing because he's an asshole in the original novel. And he's like, and it ruins his reputation because then Liu doesn't get to come back. And it's like, Now, the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about is that he disappears. Like, after he saves his life, he disappears. So either one of two things can happen. Either Lu disappears, goes back to the village, and is like, oh my gosh, and Shin's reputation is maintained, like you do, or he like gets out and Nightmare or someone kills him and then blames it on Shin and tries to like correct. I'm going to be wondering if, I know that the self-saving system is like, you're changing the storyline, you're doing this, good job. But I wonder if like the NPC villains like Nightmare, and who I think Yu is one of the villains, if they start to like try to course correct because he's trying to like correct, like change the story, if they're trying to like get it back on track for Shin to be the villain in the pickle jar. I'm wondering if that's the case, if they're going to try to like kill Lu and blame it on Shin to keep the storyline back to where it was. I don't know. I don't know. But so far, Shin is doing a very good job of staying in character while also changing the storyline. So good for him. And he's like, is this where it happened? And he's like, oh, Junior, I love how just cocky he is. He's like, how are you, Junior? And the guy's like, oh my God, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, oh, no. And he's like, oh, well, I'll make myself clear. He's so in character. He's just like, well, this is a first for me as well. And he looks like he's going to palm strike him, but he's actually, you know, trying to like make it look like that, but then help save him. And he knocks him out. Mm-hmm. And then after he knocks him out, he's like, oh my God, he's still not awake yet. Did I actually kill him? I was like, Shin. He's like, have I committed another crime as Shin Ching-Chu? I was like, Shin believes he's so intelligent, but then he does something and he's like, wait, did I mess up? Which is so true, because he's, you know, he's a person from the real world pretending to be this character for now. And he's like, killing him is the direct reason that he loses his reputation. So when he questioned if this is where it happened, which granted, the story is insanely long, according to Shin, so it could be that he saves him now and kills him later, and that ruins his reputation, and he just forgot where that happened. We, as the audience, don't know that for sure. But can we talk about this scene? Let's talk about this scene a little bit. Because the guy wakes up, Lu wakes up, and he's like, oh, he's like, he's awake. I just love, he's awake. There's a scene from, oh my God, I don't remember what show it was. Oh, I wish I could remember. But he, like, the character's asleep, and then he, like, gets up, and they're like, he's awake. And then, like, the way he says it, I wish I could remember what show it was. It was a cartoon, but it was hilarious. I laughed my ass off. And they're like, congratulations on changing the storyline. So he was supposed to die here, and he doesn't. Okay, confirmation. And then they're like, the villain Shin Ching-Cho's grudge rating has reduced, so you get 200 B points. Okay, so as of right now, for keeping track of B points, right? For keeping track of that, he should have 400 now, because he got 200 for solving the mission, and then he got 200 for saving Lu, so he should have 400 now. I don't know at what point you get the OOC unlocked. I feel like it's a lot. And he's like, it's done. And then the guy's like, you. And the guy's like, you didn't kill me. You weren't a complete asshole. And then this line here, where he's like, oh, how come you also have a young and cute face? And he's like, what did you say? So, okay. The moment that happened, I was like, okay, let's talk about this. Because Shin, his character, from the start, he's never seemed jealous of the fact that in the later timeline, Lo gets the harem of 3,000 wives. He doesn't seem jealous of that fact, like, oh, why couldn't it be me that has the 3,000 wives, and blah, 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 blah. His character has never expressed that. And we don't know in the real world, the character that is playing Shin, like what their preferences are or anything like that. That's never discussed. It will probably be in the novel. We'll get there. Don't worry. But my thing is this something where Shin's character playing Shin is also going to have a sexual awakening while reading this story and playing through it, being like, oh crap, I do like guys. Oh, I didn't realize this about myself. Because at every turn, he just doesn't like women. It's just like, not that he hates women, but he just is not attracted to them at all. And then he says things like this to Lu, where he's like, you also have a cute and young face. And I'm like, I don't know many heterosexual men that just say that and mean it. I guess if you're secure in your sexuality, you could say that. But Shin, I feel like it's just little subtle hints. If you've read Modao Zushi, it's a little subtle hints. It's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, oh, no. I thought you were a rough and strong man. It's like, and they're like, are you nuts? The guy's like, what are you doing? And there were lots of little other moments in this episode that I was like, sure, Shin. I wanted to like, sure, Shin for his actions. And then he's like spitting out blood still. And he's like, oh, don't get agitated. We're from the same clan after all. And he like wipes his mouth with the little handkerchief. And then he's like, what are you trying to do? And he's like, oh, Junior Lu. He's like, I've been meditating and is so much enlightened. He was meditating for like 10 seconds. And now he's been watching over you the rest of the time. He's like, I've gained some enlightenment while I've been in this cave for a short amount of time. Allegory of the cave, am I right? He's like, I'm embarrassed by what I've done in the past. And I love that Shin is able to say this. I love the system does not correct him because he's trying to justify everything that he's done. And he's using the system and being like, well, look, as long as I'm like an arrogant peacock, as I say it will be fine. So he's being arrogant, but he's using it to his advantage to manipulate the system and make it work. He's like, oh yes, I've gained this enlightenment and realized I should not have been doing that. And we're from the same clan. We shouldn't hold grudges against each other. He's like, why don't we work together and let bygones be bygones? And Lu is just like, I love the expression that Lu has throughout all of this, where he's just like, what? Now, my question is Lu going to develop... I was wondering this. I'm like, is Lu going to develop a crush on Shin? Because Shin is the protagonist of this story. So as the story goes on, because we're following Shin's perspective... Is Shin slowly going to gain a harem of his own, without realizing it, and have all these key players following him? And then Lo has to be like, no, he's mine. Like, is that going to be the case that happens? Because I don't know. Because Lu kind of seems very touched by this and like, oh, I don't know what to make about this. And then we'll talk about the demon clan priestess or whatever her name is. We'll talk about her. She seems to have more of a crush on Shin than she does Lo. So... we'll get to that. And he's like, you... And then he's like, are you serious? And he's like, yes, I can't be more serious. Look at my eyes. It's just they animate Shin really well. So I love that. But Shin is such a dork. And I kind of love it. And Lo's like, he's like, are you touched? And he's like, blood. He spits up blood right after it. And I love that Shin is trying to do so much. He's letting his arrogant bro side show. He's trying to stay in character as Shin. He's also trying to put up this facade to make the story go to his advantage. But then he's also being self-aware and telling the audience, like, his inner thoughts where he's like, I'm going to vomit from being cringy. He's like, oh, I'm putting on such an act. He's like, why? I love that he just, like, looks up and is like, ugh. And he's like, But, and then here's the thing, as he's like, I love that all this is going on and he's like wistfully like daydreaming and having his inner monologue. I love Shin so much. Shin may be, I don't know. I love Wei Wuxian. I love Lan Wangji. I love Xi Lian and I love Hua Chong. I love them so much. And I followed them for so long, but I am literally only 3 episodes into this series. And Shin may be my favorite MXTX protagonist. I don't know. He's just so relatable and so ridiculous. I'm going to be curious to see how he is in the novel, but I love him in this. This is amazing. He's like, but if I can repair my relationship with Lu, then I can have another lifesaver to protect me as well in the future. And then Lu's like, get away from me. He's like, stay away from me. And he's like, oh, I understand. He's like, we've been at each other's throats for so many years. And he's so theatrical as he's like sitting there with his butt to him being like, we've been at each other for so many years. It's only fair that you have a grudge against me. Oh my God. It's like, Shin, oh my God. And he's just like, it's understandable you don't trust me. He's like, it's fine. There's no rush. We can take our time. And Lu's like, I love Lu's reaction of just, what? If you have any problem when you're practicing, don't be shy and ask for my help. And Lu's like, oh my God, We need to take care of each other since we're so close. He's like, get lost! The infamous get lost phrase from MXTX. Yes. He's just like, did I get mad from practicing just now? And did he just save me? He did. He did. And he's like, I accidentally saved Lu Qingge, who was supposed to die here. I was like, did you accidentally save him? I don't think so. I think that was very intentional. Yeah, if I can repair my relationship, I won't have to be afraid of when his enemies come to seek revenge. Here's the thing about Shin's character that's so fun, is that he is a good person, I think, underneath all of this. But he doesn't want to admit it. He believes he's a troll and doesn't want to admit it. And so he's justifying everything he's doing now. He's justifying it as, oh, I just don't want the bad ending. Who would want to end up in a pickle jar while your antagonist looms over you with 3,000 women at his beck and call? Who would want that? So he's like, no. He's like, I'm not doing this because I'm a nice person. I'm not doing this because I like Lo. I'm not doing this because of this. He's like, I'm just doing it because it's the only way to save myself. Yes, self-preservation. Yes. And we, the audience, are like, is it self-preservation? Or are you just not wanting to admit it? It's like, it's going to be interesting as I read the novel to see how Shin's character tries to justify his actions and move forward. And what's so fun about it is that at the start of this whole thing, Shin's real life persona was kind of an internet troll. And was just kind of like posting these like negative comments about the series and being a troll about it. But it's almost like MXTX is saying, look, internet trolls are people too. Internet trolls are people too. And they put off this persona for whatever reason. And maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's something else. But deep down inside, you know, if you read 6,666 chapters of a story, you are probably invested for a reason. I don't think it's a hate read at that point. So I feel like MXTX is saying that in real life, the people that might be making fun of her novels or downplaying or talking bad about them are still people, and she's not mad at them. She's just like, can you just admit you like the story? So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But I also love the meta reference. And so I love the meta reference that he says, oh, I've been practicing for 3 years in this cave, but it'll feel like 10 seconds in a TV series. Love it. Love it. I hope that's in the novel. That's really funny. So Shin does say, and my dogs are playing, so you have to excuse them. Shin does say, if Lo is going to turn evil, then the Heaven Sky clan needs to be able to stand a fight with him as long as Lu Qingge is here. So I like the idea that Shin is not totally confident that he can change the storyline fully. Shin doesn't really think that it might. He thinks there's still a big possibility that Lo's going to turn evil. He's like, look, I haven't done enough yet. I don't know what this hidden storyline is and what to do. He's like, so if he turns evil, I want to make sure that Lu's still alive so that we can fight him. I'm like, got a contingency plan going. All right. That's why I think that Nightmare is going to kill Lu. I think that Nightmare is going to kill Lu and blame it on Shin because there's that contingency plan and we want to get rid of that. So I'm curious to see if we see Lu again and what his role is now that he's been spared. We'll see. But then Shin says, by the way, why doesn't this system give me a wisdom or tactics rating? And I feel like the system's like, because you're a dumbass. He's like, I can increase those ratings for sure. I'm like, oh my God, so arrogant. So arrogant. So yeah. So he manages to get out. He's got this newfound skills. And he's so proud of himself. And he's like, the important plot should be coming up soon. And that's where there's the demon attack. It's like, okay, he fully knows the demon clan is attacking all this. What's interesting is that in the original story that we know of, Lu Bing, he ends up taking over the demon army. And the one woman is one that he gets into his harem by taking it over. So we know that in the OG timeline, he takes over the army, right? And that is because Shin pushes him off the cliff. this seems like the easiest thing to avoid at this point. Him pushing him off the cliff seems like the easiest thing to avoid at this point. Why? That's why I'm so curious what's going to happen, because I feel like if Shin knows the catalyst for Lo turning evil is him pushing him off that damn cliff, then that'd be like, okay, well, we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So, or if he does get pushed off the cliff, it's not Shin that does it, so that Lo doesn't come after Shin. So I don't know if we're going to be able to avoid that part of the plot, because like at the end of this episode, he's like, oh, well, I'll just have it to where Lo doesn't fight, and then we won't have to worry about anything happening. But the system's like, no, you can't change that. You have to work around it. You can't just change it to where Lo doesn't fight. He's the protagonist. So I'm wondering at this point, if Lo ends up falling down the cliff, if he still becomes, is there a chance he still becomes, the Demon Army King, but maybe he's not targeting Shin. Maybe he's targeting someone else. Or maybe Shin has to try to like reach him, kind of Lan Wangji style. I'm very curious to see how we get to that point. We're not at that point yet. I feel like we're far from it. But then again, we might not be. I don't know. I feel like we need to see what happens with this demon army battle and all of that first, which will be next episode. To see what happens there. But I'm like, what are we doing there? What are we going to do with this? It's like the Demon Clan. They come to provoke us as expected, which means the 2 female protagonists will show up soon. Okay, so he said 2 female protagonists. We see one. What about the other one? So I'm curious about that. Okay. He's like, I have to use this opportunity to flatter Lo. I was like, wait, what? So his plan is to flatter Lo, because he has to keep that satisfaction up. The question is going to be, how do we do that? How does he manage to... He's doing a pretty damn good job of it in the battle of flattering Lo's like, my master is so powerful. He's doing a really good job of it. So I'm curious to see what else can we do? And also the idea of flattering Lo, like, I don't know if Shin realizes he's instantly like, he's like, oh, Lo, I've got to protect him. I've got to go save him. I got to do this. It's already changing so much from the first episode, because in the first episode he's like, oh, I'll just let it go, I'll just let this plot point happen, it'll be fine, I'll change it later. And he's slowly becoming more and more proactive in helping Lo and saving him while still being in character. So I'm like, we're getting there slowly but surely. It's very subtle, but I really like it. So 3 years have passed. I like that the characters haven't changed insanely a lot, but they have gotten they've gotten more mature. They look older. Lo's gotten taller. Ming Fan looks almost exactly the same. So good for him. He's maintained his youthfulness. But then, yeah, I like Ying Ying. Her hair is longer. And she has boobs. So yeah, that, and she's like, oh, go rescue Lo. And then that's what he does. And then he's just like, oh, I see you haven't learned anything. Like, he can't be out of character, but he says it in a way that's not too harsh, And then he's like, make sure you don't forget, like, the things I've taught you and all of that. And Lo's like, okay. It seems like Lo's practiced, but he still isn't as strong. Like he's practiced, but he hasn't, like, increased his power like Shin has, right? Which does make me think, looking at this, he's like, it's been a while, but you haven't improved much. And then I like how they animate, like, Lo looks older, but he still has, like, those same, like, furry eyebrows and expressive eyes. And he's just like, oh, he's like, master. And he's like, I was wrong. And he's like, no. And he's like, here you go. And he gives him the sword back. And then for a split second, Shin, like, gives him the sword, like, hey, man, hey. And he's like, I gotta get back in character. Don't lose it again. I love it. And he's like, okay, yes, I'll bear that in mind. And then that's when the other two catch up. It seems that Ming Fan is a little bit nicer to Shin, or nicer to Lo. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just, like, in a state of delusion. But he doesn't immediately, like, push Lo around and everything, since Lo's gotten a little bit bigger. It seems Ming Fan is too busy kissing ass to Shin, which, whatever. And I love that Ying Ying comes up and she's like, oh, hey, Lo. And he's like, and she's like, are you all right? And he's like, I'm fine. He's like, thankfully the master got here on time. Like, he's instantly like hardcore friend zoning her. And I'm like, of course, because he's been thinking about Shin these past 3 years, I'm sure. So yeah, and then Ming Fan is like, master. He's like, let me tell you all about the clan that's coming to get us. And he's like, oh, is it the demon clan from this one peak? And he's like, yes. They're coming out. And he's like, oh, they've hurt many of our disciples. And he's like, yes, master, you're so wise. The demon clan is despicable. And then he just goes on and explains everything. And he's like, oh yes, besides, he's like, yes, besides attacking us when we were off guard, they destroyed the rainbow bridge that connects the 12 peaks. What is this, Asgard? Like, is this like Thor Ragnarok? Is there like a rainbow bridge connecting everything? Of course there's a rainbow bridge. Of course it's connecting the 12 peaks. Of course it's rainbow. MXTX giving any opportunity to throw in the elements as she sees fit. I'm like, is this Mario Kart? Is that what we're doing? So yeah, I like that he's just like, it's all a facade, that I know everything because I've already read the story once. I know what's going to happen. And he just basically says the backstory and the plot, and Ming Fan's like, oh my God. I love that aspect of breaking the fourth wall, and we all know that Shin knows everything, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it because he's like, let's get this in motion. And he's like, I'm just putting on an act. Acting like I know everything, but I've known it from the start. And he's like, where's the clan master? And they're like, okay, here's the thing. They descended the peak due to an emergency and haven't returned yet. And if he wasn't gone, how would they dare to attack us? Look. I know that a lot of you are like, oh, Romania, why are you suspecting you? Why are you suspecting that he's Nightmare? Why are you suspecting he's a secret bad guy? And I'm like, look, it's just awfully convenient to the story that the demons just happen to attack when the clan leader leaves due to an emergency and he hasn't returned yet. And it feels like he's going to come back right when everything goes down. I'm just saying that seems a bit suspicious. Seems a little suspicious. Maybe, possibly. Or maybe I'm just jaded from other MXTX works, and so I can't trust anyone. MXTX gives you trust issues as a reader. So, I don't know. And maybe it's just because this is a novel that's kind of like a game, it is just the narrative conveniently writes it that way so that Shin has to make choices and do things on his own without relying on you, the clan leader, to be there. That also feels like a thing. It feels like it could be just the writing of the story that they're making it to where Shin has to do something on his own. Because otherwise he'd be like, oh, you can solve this problem. And I think the story is trying to be like, no, this is your task. You have to figure out how to make this work. So like, let's assemble at the main hall. So they do. We get these generic orc-like, I do feel like they remind me of like, you know, Justice League, the movie with, gotta pick up this toy. With Zod and all that. Oh my God. I feel like that's... Also, I'm realizing something about Zod, but I'm going to save it for Berserk. You know? So, but I like about these two henchmen. You have the one-armed guy, and then they both look slightly... They have intricate, unique designs, but at the same time, they look generic. It's just like generic orc monster, and that's it. That's hilarious to me. But they want their plaque, which I'm assuming is like, in Heaven Official's Blessing, the deities have plaques, and that's like their entrance plaque that gives them their status. So I'm assuming that's what they want. I'm gonna double guess. But yeah, everybody's gathered there, and then who happens to show up but our crew? The crew shows up, and they're like the Heaven Sky. I just love when Shin pulls out his fan. He's like, yes, let me monologue to you and show you my worth. You have Ming Fan on one side, you have Lo on the other side with Ying Ying. I love it. And if you notice, throughout like this entire episode, Lo is just looking at Shin the entire time. Like, eyes are focused. Even when the demon priestess comes up and Shin's like, oh, she's gonna be in his harem. She's in love with him and gonna try to seduce him. Lo ain't being seduced. He is literally looking at Shin like Shin is the most important thing in the room. Mm-hmm. I love it. He's like, do you think we're afraid of a few scums from the demon realm? Yes. And then that's when she shows up. I love her design. I do not have the body confidence to work that cosplay. I could not show that much skin confidently, but I think it would be an awesome cosplay, especially with the gossamer like just draping over her and like the bodice underneath and all the jewelry. I love her design. I think it's really cool. It's given me like if Wen Qing from Odazushi like became a demon vibe. I'm all about it. I think that's really great. Let me throw this toy. Otherwise my dog is going to bark at me. Like you do. Anyway. So yeah, and I love that Shin's like, yes, here she comes. So he's like, the sound of bells, which is related to Heaven Official's blessing in a way, and the red and black motif. You'll know from the first episode, so that's not really a spoiler too much. She's finally here. Now I need to see Hua Chong in this outfit. Can't we? The Saintess, yes. One of the most popular female characters in Arrogant Gods and Demons Journey. I love that's the name of this novel. No, I like Scum Villain's self-saving system better. Who is madly in love with Lo to the point where she's willing to betray the demon clan. And then she's finally making her appearance. Even though she is a villain. Yeah, Sha Hua Ling. And Hua! That's like Hua Chong. Yeah, Sha Hua Ling, the new saintess of the demon clan. So we have here Sha Hua Ling. So Sha. He says that Sha's madly in love with Lo to the point of betraying the demon clan. She doesn't seem to be madly in love with him from this episode, though. She doesn't even pay attention to Lo. So I'm wondering if she doesn't become madly in love with him until he falls down in the pit and then comes back as the new demon leader, and that's when she falls in love with him. That seems like it's the case, and maybe she betrays the demon clan and gives it over to Lo because she loves him. That seems to be the case. I'm gonna guess that that's what he's talking about. Yeah. I also like that we get her name in like the neon sign that pops up, whereas Lu, when we got Lu's name, it was all like crinkly and like kind of fizzling out, like it was gonna it was fizzling out like it was gonna deteriorate, like that character was gonna die. Interesting. She's one of her future harem. What an ill-fated relationship. I can't decide if Shin is actively jealous that Lo gets this harem. He definitely talks about in previous episodes about how Lo is very bold to take like Shin's favored disciple into his harem. And then he's like, oh, well, then he's going to have this demon clan woman in his harem. And he's like, what an ill-fated relationship. I feel like there's like, I don't know if Shin realizes he's being a little bit jealous that he's with a woman and not him at this moment, but it kind of reads that way. So that's super interesting. I don't know. I can't wait to see it in the novel because he looks over at Lo and then Lo's like, what? Did I do something? And Shin's like, don't worry about it. And she's like, yeah, you're the famous Juya sword. And so then she's like, you look divine indeed. She seems like she's flirting with him. And she's like, oh, you're finally here. I've waited for you for so long. Yeah, she's this big flirt. And I like that Shin is like, not as long as I've waited for you. I'm like, what? Because he wants to change the storyline. But he makes it sound like it's a flirting thing for a second. But then later, he's like, I actually hate people with those types of personalities. He's like, but she's good in her own way. I want it to be that Lo just has this like 3,000 beards. He just has 3,000 platonic girlfriends that he has no interest in whatsoever. He's just compensating for the fact that he can't get the one man that he wants, which is Shin. And we'll see if that ends up happening in this book. I don't even know. And Shin's oblivious and doesn't realize it. I don't know. And then she's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, we're not looking for a fight. We just showed up. We just heard so much about your reputation. She's just using pretty flowery language. And Shin gives her like, he's like, oh, you're so wise. And I'm like, is she? And then he's like, if you're here to learn from us through a duel, why did you hurt so many of my disciples? And she's like, oh, well, that was a misunderstanding. I feel like they're both kind of airheads in a way, but they both think they're extremely intelligent, which is hilarious. And he's like, oh, well, how quick-witted. I'm like, she's not really that quick-witted. But we'll see. The novel may add more that this doesn't, so we'll see. And he's like, you are the newly crowned saintess of the demon clan. coming to make a scene. You're trying to gain easy fame and make yourself look better. And so she's like, oh, well, I don't have to send your clan master to confront us. And he's like, get Senior Lou here. Okay, so Lou. So they're going to go find Lou, not you. So not NPC mission giver. They need to go find Senior Lou. Okay. Either he's going to show up and it's going to be okay, or they're going to find out that Lou is dead and it's going to get blamed on Shin, or Shin's going to be like, who killed him? I didn't kill him. So that's going to be, I'm curious if Lou's actually going to show up or if it's going to find out that he's dead. And then Shin's going to realize, shit, the game is trying to course correct. Since I didn't kill him, somebody else did. Uh-oh. And trying to like make the events. I feel like there's going to be Shin trying to change the story and Nightmare or the other force trying to make sure that the events actually happen. And it's going to be them conflicting with each other until things happen or don't happen in the story. We'll see, right? We'll see. And so then they just, him and the priestess talk back and forth. And she's like, oh, my underlings, what are we doing? And then he's like, okay, we'll have a duel 3-on-3. And she's like, oh, okay. We'll each pick 3 representatives and have 3 battles as a friendly competition. And here's the thing. He's like, well, I'll go first. So she picks, obviously, probably their weakest person to battle him, knowing that they have to have 3 people battle, and that's got to be the case. So the question is going to be, if Lou doesn't get back there, who is Shin going to have battle? Because I'm sure Shin doesn't want Lo to battle her, because he'd probably lose. And I'm sure he doesn't want Lo to battle. I feel like Lo could battle maybe the ogre with the giant stone axe, because he might not be as fast as Lo. And it could be an opportunity for Lo to like get encouragement from Shin, and that would only increase his satisfaction and increase his like love of Shin. So maybe that'll be the case, but I don't know. I don't know who the third fighter would be. Would they let Ying Ying fight her? I don't think so. Would Ming Fan fight her? I don't think so. Will Lou show up? I don't know how they're going to do the rest of this, because when Shin does so well, he's like, oh, I'll just battle all of them. And then it's like, no, that's not how this works. And I do like the battle between Shin and the one-armed man. I thought that was really well done. The whole time, him using the sword like a boomerang and using it almost telepathically was really cool. I liked using the fan as well, as just, the fan's just there for display. It's just there for effect, but it's very effective. And the whole time, Lo is just like, oh my God, my master is so strong. It's like, Shin doesn't even realize the effect he is having on Lo at this moment. He does not realize it, and it is hilarious. I'm like, Lo, come on now. And because, yeah, Lo is so excited. We'll have the result. And then, yeah, he beats him fair and square. And that's it. And then she's like, okay. The Saintess is like, And then as they're all cheering him on, he's like, I know why Shin's character is so arrogant, because he gets so much praise and it feels so good. I mean, honestly, if you were getting praised all the time like that, yeah, it would kind of go to your head just a wee bit. So he's just like, oh, I love when he has a little fan. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm really liking all this praise. And then it's like, okay, the first battle, victory for Shin. So your fame increased by 15, you get 50 B points. He's like, yes. He's like, a victory gained by a villain like me, and I can attain B points as well? He's like, I'll just do all of them then. Because right now he's up to like 450 points. Right? Yes. 450. I feel like he has to get like 1,000 or something. Maybe, maybe not. He's like, oh, good. He's like, well, then I'll participate in all 3 battles and pump up my experience. And then I can get a piece of equipment as well. Huzzah! And then that's when the system is like, if Lo doesn't join any battle, you will die immediately, and his satisfaction rate reaches 0. And he's like, what? I love it. Just zooms in. I love how offended he is. The look on his face, the animation, when they animate him offended, it is so funny. But his face when he's like, oh, just, how dare you? I love it. So, but here's the thing. The self-saving system knows that if he participates in all 3 battles, the story is not going to progress like it should, and it's not going to increase him and Lo's relationship, just having Shin do all the work. That's not how it works. I like it's kind of a little subtle tie to you can't just do it all yourself. You have to involve other people. So I feel like Lo is going to have to fight, and Shin is going to have to find a way to encourage or help him while staying in character, and that's going to lead to his satisfaction increasing. So yes, but also the game is the novel's like you have to include the main character. They're the protagonist. They have to fight. It's like on the one hand they can't die. The game is going to save Lo from dying, so you've got that to your advantage. But on the other hand, you have to let him interact in the story and participate, or things are going to go awry. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to work, but I love his face. His face when the system is like, tells him no, and he's like, oh, I've got this in the bag. I can do this. And the system's like, no, you don't get that, bitch. I want to pause when he finds that out. There's a look on his face. He's just so offended. God, it's great. And then, yeah, and that's the end of the episode. I freaking love it. It's amazing. So I don't know what this saintess is going to be doing. Shaw, her role in all of this. He said 2 female protagonists. So at some point there has to be another woman come in during this battle. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but I'm really excited to see, like, Lo has to fight either her or the ogre. I feel like she's gonna make him fight the ogre because that Lo isn't quite strong enough yet. So either because he's the protagonist, but he can't die. So he has to win against one of them. So here's the thing, he has to win because the game won't let him lose. So does he face the ogre and win, or does he face her and win? And here's the thing too, he could either face the big ogre and win by default because that's the character setting. And then that leaves her to face somebody, whether Lu shows up, whatever ends up happening, I don't know. There's that idea. Or it could be that Lo fights her, and because he's the main character, he has to win. He wins somehow, and she is kind of like, she falls in love with him after he beats her. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I find it weird that Lu's not there. I find it weird that Yu's not there. So I'm very curious what's going to end up happening. I think Lu is going to end up being killed by the system. Not the self-saving system, but by Yu or Nightmare or whatever to kind of course correct the story. And they're going to try to pin it on Shin. Or they're going to pin it on Lo. If they kill Lu and pin it on Lo, that's going to be interesting because Shin saved him. But here's the thing. The story makes you think because saving Lu was important. It was helping to make Shin's fate better. So if Lo gets blamed for Lu's death, if that happens, then what's the point of that? Because the story is supposed to get better, not worse. And I feel like that would make the story worse unless Shin has to intervene. This story is making, like, the timelines are starting to diverge so much that it's like Shin knows what happens in the OG story, but things are changing beyond their control. So it has me very interested to find out what happens. But I don't know. So we'll see next episode, won't we? But please no hints or clues or spoilers. If I miss something that happens in the novel that doesn't happen in this, or if they change something, we'll find that out when we get to the novel. It'll be here before you know it. But I'm super excited to see what happens. So, yeah. So I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm curious to hear your comments down below. I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Scum Villains self-saving system. Bye.